Good morning! For this video, we will present our report which is Political Caricature, together with my group mates, Aklain Umandam, Ayotrok Natashaan, yours truly, Guerrero Margie, Madrigal Jezreel, Omaweng Elena, Rampatan Yasser, Soti Alan, and Takwed Charil Joyce. So, what is a political caricature?
Based from our research, it means that these are drawings made for purpose of conveying editorial commentary on politics, politicians, and current events. They are primarily opinion-oriented medium and can generally found on editorial pages of newspapers and other journalistic outlets, whether in a print or electronic form. In short, political caricatures is the expressing about the political issues and politicians in an exaggerated way.
In addition for that information, during 1900s to 1941, Philippine caricatures gained full expression during the American era. So Alfred McCoy, who is a historian, compiled caricatures in his book entitled Philippine Cartoons, Political Caricature of the American Era, together with Alfredo Roses, who is the illustrator and the writer of the essay included in the book. Generally, the caricatures depicts the situation of Filipinos in agriculture, politics, religion, and among others during the American era. Moving on, we selected three political caricatures from the book. The first one to be presented by Omandam and Yasser.
Dr. Santos is a politician from Tondo that trying to pass his crown to his brother-in-law, Dr. Barcelona, but the national personification of the Philippines that demonstrating the Filipinos by his native Salakot and Barong Tagalog, Juan de la Cruz, attempting to forbid Santos from passing the crown to Barcelona because he should not the one who will relinquish the crown.
We see the price that Filipinos paid for the democracy modeled after the Americans. First, it seemed that the Filipino politicians at that time did not understand well enough the essence of democracy and the accompanying democratic institutions and processes. This can be seen as a rising dynastic politics in Tondo depicted in the cartoon published by The Independent.
From Alfred McCoy's political caricature book, which was published on the 16th of July 1916, which involves a youngster who was chased because he stole a chicken. They have nothing to eat, they are hungry, so he had no choice. He had to do that to feed their hunger. And of course, the police officer chased the youngster because it was a theft for the crime he committed. However, there is this man named Juan de la Cruz who was holding the police officer, was pointing other way around where the youngster was going and telling the police officer, there are more big thieves out there than that youngster you are chasing.
In simple terms, it depicts the unfair and injustice treatments experienced by the Filipino people, especially those on the lower standard, during that American regime.
And the last caricature was published in the Independent on the 27th of November 1915. As seen in the political caricature, Uncle Sam, who is writing in Kalesa, represents American as a whole, and he was drugged by students who are holding American articles such as bats and gloves. This was based on a 1907 event when William Howard Taft was transported in a chariot dragged by Liceo de Manila students to the wharf in Manila. This ended up criticized by the spirit's nationalists. So moving on, the most important part the synthesization of the document or the book. First is the authenticity of the document. So, what type of document the book was? The book Philippine Cartoons, Political Caricature of the American Era, written by Alfred McCoy and Alfred Rosses, is considered a secondary source. Why? Because it is a compilation of political caricatures during the American era, the authors only synthesized the caricatures as content of the book. And according to the definition of secondary source, which is the synthesized or analyzed primary sources. In this case, the political caricatures included in the book are the primary sources, while the book itself is the secondary. Next is the external and internal criticism of the source. The author, who is Alfred William McCoy, was an American professor of history and award-winning writer who dedicated his professional career on the research of Southeast Asian history, especially the Philippines. His publications include Philippine Cartoons in 1985, Anarchy of Families in 1994, Closer Than Brothers, Manhood at the Philippine Military Academy in 2000, and Lives at the Margin in 2001. Based on the author's credentials, we can state that this proves the credibility of his book because he is award-winning, he is professional, and he is a legitimate historian. Next is the internal criticism that includes the content and contextual analysis. In this section, it will answer the guide questions. And the guide questions include what is the main idea of the document? Who was the author or the creator? What is the idea the author trying to convey? What was happening when the document was written? What is your newly acquired knowledge and how did it connect to history? For this section, we summarize the answers of all the guide questions. Alfred McCoy, with the help of Alfred Rosses, published a book containing of 377 editorial cartoons and caricature made by various Filipino artists in 1900s to 1941 that tackles about the real situation of Filipinos during the colonization of Americans in the Philippines. This reflected anti-American sentiments in addition to the condemnation of the ruling class, which gave us a glimpse of the Philippine society in the past. Political cartoons became relevant in presenting current situation of the country, just like how they serve as primers for engaging people in the prevailing opinions at that time. So, ito po yung mga resources namin, and these are considered also as secondary sources because it is the analyzation or the synthesization of the primary sources, which is the book of McCoy and Rosses. That's all po for our report. Thank you for listening.